Before we get started, I want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so that you don't miss any of the content that is released by GoCollect. And if you're interested, head over to Regie Collects here on YouTube. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. We are not talking about Thunderdome, but we are talking about Bloggerdome. This is a new feature that GoCollect recently rolled out, in which 2 different GoCollect bloggers take opposing points of view and battle it out with words. The most recent was a square off against Raw versus Graded Comics, and it honestly made for a pretty interesting thing to read. If you are interested in seeing 2 grown men fight over comics, I definitely want to encourage you to check out Bloggerdome. It is available on GoCollect.com. Regie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and the host of the GoCollect speculation video, and I want to welcome you to another episode. In this episode, we are going to take some time to look at 6 great blog posts that are available on the GoCollect.com website. As a reminder, there is a ton of really awesome content that is posted to GoCollect every single day, but in this video, we are going to try to touch on 6 blog posts, and these posts cover a host of topics, including both Marvel and DC Comics. With that said, let's go ahead and get to the first post. This first post is an interesting one because it actually casts a light on some modern books that have quietly crept up in value. The very first book that the blogger talks about is Bone issue number 1. And this book has quietly been on the radar for quite some time, and I want to say for the better part of a decade, this book has been valued at a 9.8, somewhere around $5,000. Part of what has fueled the excitement around this book and also the values have been the repeated rumors that have existed that Bone is going to be turned into an animated show of some sort. A lot of these rumors began to circulate around 2015-2016 timeframe when it was believed that Bone was going to be turned into an animated movie trilogy at the WB. Things kind of fizzled for a while, and then there was renewed excitement around 2019 when it was announced that Bone had moved over to Netflix, and that gave people a lot of confidence. As a result of this newfound confidence and excitement, what we saw is a couple of Bone issue number 1s at a 9.8 skyrocket to the tune of $12,000 for one eBay sale and another sale for $13,200 on Heritage. Those prices are sky high. Those are some incredible prices, but there are also a lot of people out there that absolutely love Bone. But what was really good about this blog post is that our blogger offered a few cautionary notes here, specifically around this book that I do want to encourage you to check out if you are interested in picking up any comics associated with Bone. Maybe not the issue number 1 at a 9.8, but some of the other books. This is a cautionary note you definitely want to check out. The next book that is on the list that has quietly crept up above $2,000 is Deathmate Orange Preview. Now, what makes this book really special is that historically this book was bundled with Preview. And when removed from Preview, it oftentimes resulted in some severe damage to the comic that negated the ability for that book to actually get a 9.8. In the case of this book that sold for $2,250, it was actually never bundled with the magazine. It was a free standing copy, and that's how it was able to get a 9.8, which is why it commanded such a high price. Other copies of Deathmate typically go for somewhere around $65 to $160, so this book is definitely an outlier. The third book on the list is Caliber Presents issue number 1, and this is the first appearance of the Crow. This is a book that has been propelled over the last, dozen or so years because of all of the rumors that the Crow was going to be recast. These rumors started in 2014, they kind of fizzled. We saw renewed interest in 2018 and somehow have continued to persist to the point that in December of 2020, a 9.8 copy of Caliber Presents issue number 1 sold on eBay for $2,125. Only time will tell whether the Crow is made again, but definitely there is someone out there that has a whole lot of faith that that is going to happen. After watching Spycraft on Netflix, our next blogger pondered aloud if the spy genre was ripe for a comeback. And what he noted is that both Marvel and DC are digging deep in their respective histories to identify all types of properties that could potentially be made into movies and TV shows. And our blogger believes that there is some potential that both companies could dig into the spy genre. And so for that reason, he identified a couple of books in the Golden Age and the Silver Age and also in the Modern Age that you may want to check out if you do believe that spies are going to make a comeback. While I'm not going to go through every book that our blogger identified, I do want to touch on a couple that you may be interested in. When it comes to the Golden Age, he specifically mentions 3 books, and all 3 have some pretty awesome names. The very first is Super Spy from Centaur Publishing, and it was released in the 1940s. Next up, Atomic Spy Cases from Ace Magazine in the 1950s. And the most popular of them all may have been Spy Smasher from Fawcett in 1941. When it comes to the modern age, there are also a couple of books that the blogger mentions that you may want to take the time to actually read if you want to experience some of this spy stuff. And he mentions several, and a lot of them are actually associated with one specific writer. The first book is Greg Rucka's Queen and Country from Oni Press. Next up, Sleeper from Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. DC's Checkmate, also from Ed Brubaker, is one that you may want to consider. Rounding out the list is Grayson. And then lastly, Velvet, also from Ed Brubaker. While I don't know if spies are going to make a return, I do want to encourage you to stay tuned because I'm going to get to another blog post that is going to talk about 3 spies from Marvel and DC that you may want to invest in. Our next blogger is asking an interesting question, and the question is if Hawkeye-related keys are actually undervalued. And over the course of this blog post, which is linked down in the description, our blogger does a solid job of analyzing various comics that are associated with Hawkeye and drawing some comparisons to like-kind comics. And while I'm not going to go into all of the details, I do want to encourage you to check this blog post out because Hawkeye is going to have his own TV show and will potentially return in some MCU movies. To that point, these books could represent a pretty awesome investment should you choose to pursue it. So I want to read this next blog post, and I want to do it in the tone in which I think that it was written, at least how I hear it in my head. Have you ever been priced out of keys? Daunted by the price appreciation of your buy list? Don't get discouraged and don't overreach. I've got you covered. I added the last little bit, but I think that was the blogger's intent. This post is really designed to say, don't fret. Don't fret over the books that you want to get that might be out of your reach. The blogger's point, I think, is that there are still many different ways that you can challenge yourself and that you can have fun in this hobby if you find that many of the books that you want are out of your reach because prices are going up. And I think that this is a very important thing for us to talk about, to be honest with you, because books are really expensive. And so I definitely understand how people can get discouraged. And I think our blogger does that as well. But in this post, he offers up a few different practical things that you may want to consider doing if you find yourself getting frustrated, if you find yourself not wanting to be in the hobby. There are some things in this post to basically say you can still have fun. And one of the things that the blogger talks about that he actually does is he buys comics from his birth month and year. And that is just one way that he has found that he can keep himself in the hobby, pick up some really awesome books that may have a little bit of sentimental value, if you will, because it's from his birth month and birth year. I would definitely encourage you to check out this blog post if you find yourself getting discouraged. This post, like all of the others, are linked down in the description. As mentioned earlier in this episode, we are going to talk about 3 spy characters that you may want to invest in at both Marvel and DC. And I can tell you this list is weighted heavily towards the DC books. The very first character that is identified is known as Nemesis. Nemesis was first introduced in The Brave and the Bold issue number 166 as a backup story, and his backup story ended up running all the way through Brave and the Bold issue number 192. Nemesis is your quintessential spy guy. We're talking black turtleneck and gun holster, like the whole 9 yards. Later on, after being introduced, he became a part-time member of the Suicide Squad and was also featured in several episodes of the Justice League Unlimited animated series. Our blogger points out here that Nemesis will probably never be a frontline character, but there is a chance that he could appear as an auxiliary character in some other series. And so this could be a character and a book that you may want to check out. The next character that is identified is also a DC character, and we are specifically talking about King Faraday. King Faraday actually appeared in the 1950s, and he appeared in a title called Danger Trail issue number 1. King Faraday in many ways is akin to like a Nick Fury in the MCU. He actually sporadically appeared over several decades after first appearing in Danger Trail issue number 1, specifically in the 90s when they brought his title back. He also appeared in Justice League Unlimited and also Justice League The New Frontier. As you may have already surmised, the very last spy that we are going to talk about is Nick Fury. And Nick had his first appearance as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. in Strange Tales issue number 135. This book has an FMV of around $1,500 at a 9.2, and his ongoing series, Nick Fury Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. issue number 1, has an FMV of roughly $325 at a 9.2. And in the opinion of our blogger, both of these books potentially are undervalued. There is one other spy that is mentioned in this blog post, and I am not going to tell you who it is, but I definitely would encourage you to check out this blog post if you want to know more. This last blog post actually talks about one of my favorite books, that being Amazing Spider-Man issue number 1, which has been catapulted into the most popular books for the week. Specifically, it cracked the top 5, which is a little unusual for a Silver Age book of this type. Our blogger does a pretty solid job of digging into some of the performance associated with this book. And I will tell you, I expected this book across the board to perform incredibly well when you look at the most recent sale versus the previous sale. But I can tell you there are a couple of spots of red that are on the ledger. But as the blogger points out, we shouldn't get too excited about that because there is a little bit of a reason behind that. If you are a fan of Amazing Spider-Man or thinking about picking up this really awesome Silver Age key, this is a blog post that you want to check out. So there you have it. We have reached the end of another recap. If you enjoyed this recap, I certainly want to encourage you to hit the thumbs up button and leave a comment behind so we can mix it up in the comment section. One of the other things that I want to throw out to you is that if there is content that you want the bloggers to cover, you should leave those suggestions in the comment section. The bloggers read those, GoCollect, read those comments, and you never know what kind of magic could be made. So don't be shy about leaving your suggestions behind. If you enjoyed this episode, I definitely want to encourage you to tune in next week when we get to do this all over again.